Joining us tonight to talk about the central issue involved here is Brendan Carr, Commissioner of the FCC. He previously served as the FCC's General Counsel. Brendan, it is good to have you with us, and thanks for being here. This quite a remarkable display with all the time spent on Capitol Hill in the Democratic-led House, that the central issue here, the behavior of those massively powerful economically and politically titans of technology, wasn't even discussed. How could that be?
Yeah, look, Lou, this is one of the most important conversations we can be having within the conservative movement right now. When it comes to big tech, there are many on the right, including a lot of people here in D.C., who say we simply have to sit on our hands and do nothing. Faced with the massive accumulation and abuse of power, they take an ostrich-like approach. I don't think that's right, and there's some in D.C. that are standing up. I think the Trump administration this week took a big step in the right direction. As you noted, they filed a petition at the FCC where I work on Section 230, which is going to look at some of the special protections that the social media platforms have enjoyed above and beyond the First Amendment rights that you have here and that I have.
You know, watching Jim Jordan and Matt Gaetz and Andy Biggs and a handful of others, they raised a voice in defense of our Constitution and conservatives who are being crushed by each one of the people that you saw there, whether it's Amazon and Jeff Bezos, Facebook and Mark Zuckerberg. You know, it is just stunning to watch what they are doing, and with almost without comment from the national media, which should be standing up for, you would think, of all things, freedom of expression. Let's say Section 230, to protect these technology companies, these social media companies in particular, from liability for their users. That has become an artifact, has it not? It is a relic of a moment that no longer exists in our history. Why should there be special protection and immunity for these massively powerful technology companies who are swinging that power in the direction of the conservatives with seemingly every opportunity they get?
What's interesting is there's actually bipartisan support for this. Vice President Biden has said that Section 230 should be revoked immediately. Section 230 was passed in the 1990s to deal with the limited content moderation that nascent websites like Prodigy and CompuServe messaging boards were engaged in. To your point, flash forward 20 years. The type of content moderation that's going on today looks nothing like it did in the 1990s. Courts have taken Section 230 and given it expansive reading. So the Trump administration appropriately has filed a petition at the FCC asking us to adopt rules that clarify the scope of Section 230 so we can hew more closely to the text and the purpose of that law.
The text, the purpose, and the conclusive action, it seems to me, should be, Brendan, get the hell rid of it. Just get rid of it altogether. Why should there be any immunity for them for any reason? There should be, if anything else, protection from them for every American citizen.
There's a lot of straw man arguments out there about preserving the status quo on 230. One says it's the law that created the internet. Not so. We don't have Section 230 in Europe. These websites still exist in Europe. People say we can't touch 230 consistent with the First Amendment. Not right. There is no First Amendment right to Section 230. And so I think there's plenty of paths where we can go forward that can promote more speech. That's what 230 is about. The law itself talks about promoting a diversity of views and empowering users to engage in their own content moderation filtering. So I think we should turn off the bias filters and let people make their own decisions about the content moderation and what they want to see online.